Hi, everybody. My name's Brennan,
You've got Gabe.
and we'd like to welcome back Parker to the show.
Hey, what's going on?
And this is Shadow Valley. So, everybody, as much anticipated, we have gotten to our episode of the Epstein conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm really excited for this one, actually. And, just to echo some of the sentiments of, I think the majority of Americans, and at least us here, I have a clip I'd like to play that extremely explains kind of that sentiment from Senator Kennedy. Here it is.
How can I put this? Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jerry Epstein. Name three things that don't hang themselves. That's what the American people think.
So you heard Senator Kennedy himself. The sentiment of the American people is Jeffrey Epstein didn't hang himself. And, just a little extra, not content, but background. Senator Kennedy is also the guy who said, if you don't support the police next time you're in trouble, call a crackhead. This guy, he's kind of wild, but the Jeffrey Epstein clip you just heard is actually part of a speech that he gave in the Senate, believe it or not. So that's where that came from. So just to kind of start off with our Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy, we're going to start with one of the more out there theories, and let's dig
I just
right
had a
into
thought.
that.
Should we start with mellow and then get increasingly out there?
Just depends, because did you want to end? Well, we could do that.
Yeah.
I don't care. I just think builds up the suspense even more,
Yeah, that's
All
true.
right, let's do that then.
Well, I guess we can just dive into like one of the bigger ones where
Yeah.
Epstein, like Brennan just stated, we're all in agreement that Epstein did not kill himself.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of, I don't think there is a lot of evidence that supports our theory, if you will.
Right.
Like, for instance, like the autopsy that was done on Epstein after he allegedly killed himself. That a lot of it was like the doctor had said that there's no way that any sort of or the damage that he had on his neck and stuff was not indicative of him hanging himself. And so there's a lot of stuff like that after they had done the autopsy that supports that he wasn't, on top of all of the cameras just somehow not recording and all the security guards are gone. Like, come on now. What is this?
Ruh-roh, Hillary. They're on us.
Well, like he was supposed to testify the next day, right?
Yeah.
So talk about timing.
Yeah.
And also like if you put yourself in Epstein's shoes, you're the next day gonna do something like that could potentially help your sentence by like being a whistleblower, pointing fingers, showing other people that would be involved and things like that. Why in the hell you kill yourself the day before?
Right.
You're gonna do something that like could work out into some sort of like agreement deal for yourself, some sort of like what's it called when you hide from like witness protection
witness
or something?
protection, yeah.
Like I don't know if that was on the table for him, but it might have been had he had some good info.
Something that going back to in the state of Florida, a lot of the people who were involved, though, already had immunity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that was part of like back in.
With the sweethearts deal or whatever?
Yeah, back with the sweetheart deal. That was part of it. A lot of his co-conspirators got immunity from it, which was crazy. And that's why kind of last time when we talked about how Courtney Wild and, oh, please don't hate me, I'm blanking on her name right now, Virginia, I don't remember her last name. they were going back to try and appeal the decision. Even though Jeffrey Epstein was dead, they wanted to appeal the decision by the court to give these people immunity.
So they could then be prosecuted as
right. Because Florida already admitted, like, yeah, we done messed up.
well. Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, we should have, prosecuted him further. And so they went back on that ruling, but they did not strip out the immunity. And so it's interesting there. And the only reason we got Jeffrey Epstein is because of the state of New York, actually, which was really interesting. In the 60 Minutes on it, they actually said, New York actually did what Florida was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, unfortunately, like, that is true. Because, the sweetheart deal was terrible. But, going back to what we were talking about, it is all too convenient that, because I feel like that's an important distinction to make, because in Florida they had immunity, but they didn't have it in New York. And so you're going to have Epstein start testifying here in New York, and he just happens to kill himself when he's going to do this. And all the people don't have their precious immunity. They were chilling in Florida, but in New York, they're like, shoot.
One thing too that I was listening to Real AF with Andy Frisella.
Yeah.
And he had on his podcast Vivek Ramaswamy. You don't like him?
He's not my favorite.
I don't really know. This is literally the first time, because I don't pay attention to politics.
Right.
So this is the first time I'd heard of him. But anyways, what he was saying about the Epstein thing is he's like, they keep pointing their fingers to, oh, there's no way anyone would have gone into prison. There's no way. Like, he definitely killed himself. There's no way. But no one said a word about that. Well, maybe it happened maybe it was someone inside the prison. They never even acknowledged that. And so he's talking about how, like, they point their fingers somewhere else to, like, to because they know there's no way someone could have gotten in there.
Right.
Because no one got in there. Someone did it from the inside.
Right. Well, just barely. Let's be honest. Like, I don't have too much confidence in our prison system right now, just because literally 10 days ago, we had a guy escape from a prison in freaking Pennsylvania by crab walking up the wall. And he evaded authority for 10 days.
No, he is Peter Parker.
Dude.
He's Spider-Man, bro.
You need to see the video. Like, after we're done, you have to see the video of this guy. He literally crab walked up the wall and escaped this Pennsylvania prison.
Go
Like,
get him, Tiger.
if this guy can crab walk out of prison,
How do you crab walk up a wall?
so it's like he spread his hands and legs out in between like two walls.
Oh.
And then he kind of did that and then went backwards, and he literally just crab walked
The prison
out.
architect should be
Bro.
should be held accountable.
Second time somebody's escaped from that prison.
in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And so if somebody can break out of the prison by crab walking out of a wall, I think it shouldn't be too hard for somebody who has a lot of power to break into a prison to go hang somebody.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question. Especially, it's way easier to go down than it is to go up.
Exactly. Freaking Mission Impossible style, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, they brought their own boombox to play the Mission Impossible theme. I had to go kill my buddy Epstein.
Basically. Shoot.
Yeah. So just to kind of hit on what happened in the prison too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that. So for instance, like he was set on suicide watch, July 23rd,
Right.
and then he committed suicide, air quotes around that. Committed suicide on August 9th, I believe. Yeah, August 9th. So they had him on suicide watch. They're supposed to be conducting 15-minute intervals. Every 15 minutes, they're supposed to be checking in on Epstein to make sure he wasn't killing him. To make sure he wasn't harming himself in any way.
Right.
And then there's actually like a log of suicide, like the suicide watch prevention log, where it says like, oh, he's sitting in his bed, staring at the wall, sitting in his bed, talking to the wall, sitting on the ground, talking to himself. Like, so they were doing these 15-minute logs, but the night that it happened, apparently there were two security guards that were actually charged because they lied on their prison record. So it was Tova Noel and Michael Thomas. Both of those fools lied and said that they went and checked on him, did all their checks to make sure he was good,
Yeah.
and then walked away. And by the time they came back, he was dead.
Right.
And at that time, they called like all the staff, like hospital staff and stuff, to come check on him, but he was already long dead by that point. So to kind of hit on what Parker had said, like it definitely, I believe it was for sure 100% somebody on the inside. Like
Yeah.
it was probably a guard or something, because I think, like we said last time, if somebody with a lot of power comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of money to kill somebody for me, and you're in a tough spot, or you just have no morals or anything, you know, like I'm not saying that, I don't know. Again, it's hard to like say like, oh, Epstein should have died.
Right.
You know, he was a piece of shit, but also he could have prevented a lot of pieces of shit from doing other stuff. And so, but I still think if I was offered like an insane amount of money, knowing exactly like all the crap that Epstein had done, then that would be like a very hard thing to pass up, you know? And so, but I think with the security guards, whoever was on the inside, you get offered an X amount of money,
Yeah.
and it becomes super easy at that point, especially if you have a reason like for the money, you know? Like we were talking last time, you don't know circumstances, and then it pushes them to do crazy stuff.
$1.50 says it was a guard.
$1.50.
Yeah.
All right, dude. When we die, we'll ask freaking
Jeff.
whoever our entity is.
We'll ask Jeff.
Yeah. All right. I'm first in line to talk to Jeff. I called it like millennia ago. Like,
1, 2, 3.
yeah.
Dibs.
Dibs. I
Nose
go
goes.
first.
Nose goes.
So, Jeffrey, we did a podcast on you.
He's like, yeah, you and everyone else.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, what do you want to know?
Who hung you?
He just gives us a list of like, here's like most asked questions and answers. And he's like,
Oh,
all right, if any
shit.
of those aren't on there, just like come back to me.
He probably has that. Dude, he's in hell.
Yeah, that's true. But
I have to go get like my visa to go to hell.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Me and
Visa.
him.
He's like, actually, Tom Hanks wasn't involved. Y'all just shitting on him.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
ah, crap.
Dude, that's the other thing. Like, oh, sorry, just kind of go off topic like we usually do. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's fine.
have you guys seen that stuff about Oprah and Hawaii?
No.
Yeah.
Is it where what they asked her to leave and she was like recording people or something?
Well, so
Did she pull a Karen?
No.
I don't know, but so
Okay, good.
apparently, like a couple days before all the fires happened,
Yeah.
she had bought like a bunch of land.
Mhm.
Or I mean, I might be totally butchering this. I hope
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, I apologize. But yeah, apparently she bought a bunch of land because like that's another conspiracy that people have, that these big corporations. I don't know if we talked about this,
Mm-mm.
but there's a lot of conspiracy that these big corporations started the fires out in Hawaii
Right.
because they wanted to buy the land. And
Yeah.
then
So they wanted to
build on it.
devalue the land and get it for cheap.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And so people think that Oprah was a part of it as well
Yeah.
in that sense. And I think The Rock is actually also
Like Dwayne
linked
Johnson.
to it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
He's from Hawaii.
Is he
Wait, is-
really?
Is
Yeah.
he? I thought he was from like the islands, the other islands. Or
No,
is he
so
from
when I
Hawaii?
was in the MTC, I went with shout out Mr. Tuya, if you ever hear this. But he went to the same high school as The Rock, and then when they had like some state playoff or something like that,
Right.
The Rock sent them like a motivational video to like get them all pumped up.
Yeah.
He showed it to me. But
Dang.
yeah.
That's interesting. Hey,
Huh.
did you know, just another side note, did you know Moses went to the MTC?
Uh-uh.
Yeah. He took a whole bunch of Jews to the MTC. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because they walked on dry ground.
It was
You know, he
empty.
like made the sea empty.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, MTC. Oh,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm
Empty.
sitting here like, what? Like, does that stand for something? MTC? Like, what? But that makes sense.
I should Epstein myself after that one. Just kidding.
Normalize Epsteining yourself. No, don't.
Just
do that.
kidding. No, that was a joke. And the other joke was pretty crappy. But I heard it in a seminary class, and I just couldn't help myself. But yeah, I mean, going back to Epstein, I also think it's interesting because, you know, personally, after going through what we know, the person that Epstein cares about the most is Epstein. Like Epstein wants best for him. He doesn't really, he does what's beneficial for him. And so if he's getting a deal to testify against these other people, I don't think he's the kind of guy to take one for the team. I don't think he's going to help his homies out by not testifying. I think Epstein's going to sit there and be like, look, I have my empire. I don't want to go to jail for very long. I can get this deal if I snitch on you guys. I'm going to rat you guys out. Like, sorry, that's just business.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Also,
it
he's
happened.
way too big of a pansy.
Occupational hazard. And so
Occupational hazard. Let's get OSHA involved.
basically, like,
I was wearing my safety glasses while I did these awful things.
He was wearing his squinters, dude.
Yeah.
we use adequate protection.
Oh,
Yeah, that's why you had to have so many people involved, so they weren't lifting more than their allotted weight.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Special machinery too.
Yeah, so sorry, just to hit back on the Oprah thing, apparently she's bought 520-acre plot of land in Maui in 2023, and then earlier was 330 acres. And so people are saying that she's buying all this land to try and like develop on it,
Yeah.
but she started the fires, which I mean, I think that's far fetched,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I could see it.
That
I
would-
could see it.
That would honestly
Rich people.
be genius, because where else is it going to grow back? So like, it's literally an island that naturally is super fruitful. Like,
Right.
and also like fires are actually healthy in the long run. It's not, I'm not saying it's healthy for the people in
Right,
Maui that are
right.
like jumping in the water to escape the inferno.
Well, and then all their like houses are destroyed, their livelihood. The thing is too that a lot of like the work out there is because of the tourists.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that people are getting frustrated by is like if all these fires are going on in Maui, then people are having to cancel their trips. They can't make it down there.
Right.
And so then the work goes down as well because people aren't like the tourists keep the economy running.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult for people to like find any work and keep up with like their livelihood just goes down the drain. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty sad to actually think about in my opinion, just because
Yeah.
it's like if corporations, and we hit on this last episode, but
Yeah.
corporations don't give a shit about anybody else but the money, you know?
Right.
And so if they can mull over a bunch of like lives with like little to no repercussion because it's a wildfire,
Yeah.
you know, they're gonna
They'll
do it.
it.
Yeah.
I still think corporations are better than the government, like personally, just because they care about that bottom dollar more than they care about, I guess, power. I mean, they still like power, but they get the power through our money.
Right.
And so that's kind of their main focus. And so they're going to try and do things that are more like beneficial, more problem solving than the government does. I mean, you know, the government doesn't do a lot of things like, to quote a former president, you know, some of the scariest things you can hear is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Like, in all honesty, there's the reason why they call all the government organizations the alphabet soup, because we have so many goddamn programs that don't work. And there's so many, this isn't a political podcast, but just saying there's all of these issues. Government tries to solve these problems. They don't solve them. Corporations, they're more likely to solve them.
Yeah.
But you know, there are some unethical things that go on. And it's interesting because I'm actually studying public relations, which is like, journalists see it as evil because, you know, PR, you're supposed to make everything look good. You know, you have to fluff things up a lot. Whereas with like journalism, you're trying to get to the cold, hard facts. And, you know, learning about a lot of this stuff, there is kind of a lot of gray things that companies do to try and like sell stuff to you and try and look good. But I think morally and ethically, like they're better than the government, but companies still do a lot of like messed up shit.
Yeah.
Like,
I
but
agree.
That's my personal opinion on that matter. Some people think the government's like God. They want to drink from the tit of the government.
The teat.
And
Take a sip from the teat.
they just
I'll
think the
drink from
government
about
can
any
save them.
teat. No, I'm just kidding.
Drink from Joe Biden's tea, dude.
Okay, yeah. Should have thought before I said that.
Oh, jeez.
Anyways, so I guess going back to Jeffrey Epstein, he obviously was really immoral, but I just don't think he was somebody who would take one for the team. I think Jeffrey Epstein cared about Jeffrey Epstein like these companies only care about themselves.
For sure.
And I don't think there's any honor among thieves, as they say. And, and he is a thief because he stole the innocence of these young girls.
And I'm sure money.
And money. Yeah, I was about to follow that up. But I just think it goes to show that's another reason why he wouldn't kill himself. Because it just doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
I mean, unless you disagree, do you think that makes sense, like Jeffrey Epstein killing himself, or do you think he really was about number one? Because he's a narcissist. He's a textbook narcissist.
Yeah, I agree. He is about number one, right? Like, especially with all the money. And they state there's a report said that within Jeffrey Epstein's account there was like $500 some odd dollars left at the moment that he died. And so to me, what that says is like, there's no way that this guy would have lost all this cash somehow. He probably moved it to some offshore account and then was thinking to himself, okay, here's what my plan is. I'm going to confess and I'm going to give up a bunch of people. And like Parker had stated, like, hopefully that'll get me some sort of witness protection program. And then you go live out, do the rest of your life, like under watch essentially, but then you have all this cash
in your offshore or in your nonprofit or in your whatever.
Exactly. And so it just seems really weird. And I think to hit on what you said, for 100%, he's all about himself.
Right.
I think he was thinking ahead to be able to, and for somebody like I said, I don't want to speak anything good about Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
But the guy obviously was very analytical and very thought out because he did this for a long, long time without getting caught.
Well, he was a smart guy for sure.
Right.
Like, and I don't think that necessarily says anything good about him because you can be smart, but you can still be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like, he's very arrogant and that he was very smug, very arrogant, but it also goes to show how methodical and how evil he was because he knew what he was doing.
Right. Exactly.
The fact that he was brilliant enough to pull this off for so long just goes to show how methodical, how evil, and how much he actually knew.
Right. And somebody like that, do you think, like, there's no way that they didn't start thinking as soon as he got caught, as soon as he got convicted?
Yeah.
I'm sure immediately he started thinking, okay, what are my next steps now? I'm going to try to get some sort of another deal because he knows he did it already. He got the sweetheart deal. So what's stopping him from doing it again? And so for him, it was like, okay, I'm going to think my steps throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
I'm going to move all my money out of my accounts so then the government just can't take it.
I mean, he's got friends in high places. Why not?
Exactly. And so then
Easy.
And when it comes down to it, he's thinking to himself, okay, cool, I should be set now. And then he dies. That just seems like you start looking at it from the outside instead of trying to like tell yourself that he did kill himself.
Yeah.
You start looking at all like kind of the facts and the things that happen behind it. And you really, I think you start to realize that, well, none of this really is playing into him killing himself. You know, like it just seems so far fetched, and to think that people still have like any ounce to of thought that he did, I just think is dumb.
Especially like how we said he's smart. So he I'm sure along the way was planning for plan B, So he's like, okay, if when I get caught, this is what I'm going to do with my money. He executed that plan, right? That's why he had no money in his account.
Yeah.
Right.
If when I get caught, these are the people I'm going to throw under the bus for my plea deal. And like he had kept, like what I've read online is that
records and
he
everything.
had kept records of every single thing, and it was his own insurance policy.
Yep.
And, I'm sure that the people in the moment were like, okay, I think when he got caught, it was probably understood by anyone he'd ever had a transaction with and by him. It's just a race to be able to testify before I get killed. I'm sure he knew as soon as he had a date, he was like, oh shit, I hope that is not released to the public because, I'm sure anyone he'd had business with, they instantly knew if he was gonna testify
This
at
could
all.
be the end for
Yeah,
me too.
this
Right.
is so I'm, he had his insurance and everyone knew he had his insurance
Right.
and
Well,
he was a big target.
he
Huge,
kept those
yeah.
logs of all those interactions, kind of like what we talked about, where he'd say language lessons for Lisa
Right.
for like X amount of dollars this day, this time, because then later he could use that as blackmail.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we know that for a fact, and we know like he had videos of these interactions going on because when they raided his mansion in New York and they found all of these sexually explicit videos between him and a whole bunch of other people and these young girls, that he kept a lot of these things and he would use them as blackmail. I
Right.
mean, that just goes in to see like how methodical and how smart he is, because he's not trying to keep it on the DL.
Right.
He's elevated this enough to where he can really control people, and I think that's where he got a lot of his power from. And so, without a doubt, you have all of this evidence and all this dirt on other people, and you say you're going to testify against him in court. Like, you're a prosecutor's dream out there. Like,
Oh yeah.
they're freaking like enjoying themselves with how easy this case is going to be because you got your star witness, you got all of this evidence against these people. He's going to bring more into it because he knows more and he knows how to get stuff. And you're going to have a field day. You're going to look magnificent. I mean, think about it. If I was a prosecutor and I had this golden child with all my evidence that I knew he was going to be able to get a grand jury to just like convict just like that.
Just people dropping like flies, dude.
Oh yeah, it would just be. I would totally do that, and think how good you'd look as a prosecutor too. Like I know the state was drooling all over this case, but again, the people who are in the higher ranks can't afford Jeffrey Epstein to do this. People who are high enough politically, a lot of the conspiracies talk about the Clintons.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's been mentioned.
Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew's been
Yeah.
mentioned as well. You have these people with influence who are in politics. I'm assuming there's probably judges in there that
yeah.
were also like being blackmailed by him or had evidence. And he had everybody everywhere. And it just was all too convenient that he was killed because he was set up.
Right.
And it's obvious. I mean, it's obvious, but the fact that we don't have all the evidence to prove it is what sucks the most because it makes sense logically. Everything we've talked about, we have all the circumstantial evidence, save it be the physical evidence like the autopsy,
Right.
and those reports. But outside of that, where we're like, well, maybe in this time period when there's no like cameras recording or the cops weren't going or the guards weren't going around, this might have happened.
Right.
Like we have all of this circumstantial evidence that like connects, but we can't prove any of it. And plus, even if we could prove that he didn't kill himself, who did it?
Right.
That's the issue. Who
And
can we prosecute?
It could be a huge group of people like that, and that's the other thing too that seems is pretty interesting. That because we talk about all these people that could be involved,
Right.
and I'm sure it wasn't just one of them. I'm sure it was a big number of people that got
Right.
together and said, "Okay, we need to shut this guy up. Otherwise, we're all screwed." They had everybody had a vested interest to shutting Epstein up.
Right.
And it wasn't just people that were like actors or politicians. It was like everybody. It seemed like
Yeah.
everybody in like higher government, even like lower kind of government and stuff,
Yeah.
that were all involved in this situation. And that many people that could have that much power, like, I mean, it was probably so easy for them to make something happen, and it's just crazy, man.
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
So we know there was one of his accomplices that did get caught, Ghislaine.
Yeah.
So do you think the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered and got hung in his cell is the reason why Ghislaine hasn't come forward to rat some people out? Or why do you think Ghislaine is being so quiet? Like what's her motive behind it? What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. I think she has some bodies under her bed too. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure she maybe doesn't have as much evidence to protect herself
Yeah.
as Epstein did, especially with all those records being taken already.
Yeah.
I'm sure at a time, at some point in time, she probably could have come out and said, "Hey, I've got all this evidence.
Right.
You guys offer me a good deal, and I'll give you all the people that are involved." But then Epstein gets caught.
Yeah.
So then he has to go in his own pocket, pull all this evidence to protect himself.
Yeah.
And then Ghislaine is left kind of in the dust at that point,
Right.
right? Because then once Epstein gets killed, what happens to all that evidence? It's gone. It's
Yeah.
gone. It's up in the air. Somebody else has it now.
Yeah.
You know, whether that be some higher executive or whether that be some like the government in general, like
Right.
all that evidence is no longer in her possession. And maybe they have backup copies and stuff, but
Yeah.
anybody that, well, and that's the other thing too. Now that she like sees that what happened to Epstein, it's like,
Right.
well, do I really want to come out and say something at this point? You know?
Here's another question too that I just barely thought of. So that clip from that we played at the beginning from Senator Kennedy, the Senate launched an investigation into the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Like that was part of his
Yeah, that's
speech in the investigation.
Yeah.
How come the Senate couldn't pull anything up? What happened there? Who? I mean, I think it just goes to show, like, personally, I think that also goes to show how deep this ran. I mean, you have a Senate investigation looking into this thing, and they just happen not to be able to pull it all up. I mean, we even go back to the anthrax episode, and the Senate launched an investigation. They were still able to pull some stuff up, like, oh yeah, the FBI really bungled this up, and they killed a guy after not knowing. And so I find it extremely interesting that they just weren't able to get to the bottom of it. The Senate wasn't able to come to this conclusion. It was more as they put a dog and pony show up.
Yeah. Just to make people happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Versus actually getting somewhere. And, you know,
well, I think therein lies the evidence of like who is involved, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure somebody within the Senate that had a lot to lose probably tried to put dampers on everything, right?
Yeah.
There's this investigation going on, and I'm sure somebody there was saying, oh shit, if somebody finds what actually happened, I'm screwed.
right.
You know? And so they're trying to do everything in their power to make it seem like, oh, there's nothing going on. You know, they got the reports of the autopsy.
Yeah.
They checked to see what happened with those security guards, but that was essentially it. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't find much evidence after that to prove what actually had happened within that jail cell
Yeah.
when the cameras went down. Like,
That's why Mitch McConnell freezes all the time, bro.
he's just, dude, oh,
He's
man,
just going back to,
That was the best, like, meme. And the things that have come from that are just money, bro.
Well, he's done it twice now, too. Like,
oh, really?
yeah,
I
he
thought-
did it again just last week or something like
my
that. He was just kind of sitting there, like, he was in the middle of a speech and they were asking him if he's going to, like, run again. And he was just like, dead. Like, he lasted even longer, dude. He's just going back to Vietnam, dude. He's like, I saw Jeffrey Epstein's egg-shaped penis. Oh, shoot. I should have gotten that clip from the lawyer asking him in that freaking like
the
examination
prosecution.
when he was asking if he had an egg-shaped penis. I think that would have been a really
would've
interesting
been
clip to
funny to
You just
play.
hear a zipper. Zzz.
Take a look at yourself.
Yeah.
Is it true that you have an egg-shaped penis? I think he
Doesn't
got
everyone?
mad after that. I still have no idea what that would look like, but whatever.
Egg shaped. I don't know. It's probably just like a little chode or something.
Just like curls in on itself.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, this is-
just
we don't need to
serious-
talk about
Never
Jeff
mind.
Epstein's
Back to the
penis.
Senate. Yeah, it's just it doesn't make sense how they can launch an investigation and just put on this show and not really get to anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, it's interesting because we were laughing about Senator Kennedy and his clip where he's like, he talks about the Christmas ornaments and drywall and Jeffrey Epstein, 3 things that don't hang themselves.
Yeah.
Like that's entertaining. That's entertaining to the American people. But it could also be kind of like a distraction because, oh, it's like, he's funny. He believes this stuff. He's on our side. It's propaganda. Like,
Right.
because if somebody
He gets it.
he gets it.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
relating with us. Oh yeah, we don't want to actually call a crackhead to help us.
Right.
Like I feel
I don't even have any crackheads' numbers. I delete them all.
fair enough.
Yeah. After I get my goods, I'm
Yeah,
out, dude.
yeah.
I'm done.
Bro, just ask my family members where they live in our neighborhood. Point them out too.
I think you're right. I think what better way to kind of stay under the radar than to point something out that you might be involved in, you know?
Right.
Like if I I don't know, let's say you murder somebody, and then instead of waiting for somebody to find that body,
Right.
you go to the cops and say, I found a body. Like
Right.
that kind of immediately almost like, and I'm sure that there's some sort of process that goes within or behind that.
Right.
But this is like, it's just kind of a for instance, right?
Yeah.
In that situation where what if he was involved in this whole scheme
Right.
with Epstein? What better way to do it than to shed more light on it so people think, oh, he's not involved. Like, why would you want to shed more light on it?
Exactly.
You know?
And I don't want to go as far, like, because there's no evidence to back this up. There's no conspiracy behind this to back this up. So I don't want to sit there and be like, Senator Kennedy was involved in this. But I think it's definitely an interesting example to use because it was a show in the Senate that maybe other people on the committee might have done things like that to kind of mislead people. And so I don't want to insinuate without any supporting evidence that Senator Kennedy did that. The only person I like to throw the allegedly with is Dick Cheney because, he's a piece of shit and he's fun to poke fun at.
Yeah.
I mean, and at this point, he's enough of a running joke to where we all know, like, most of what we take about Dick Cheney's a joke.
Yeah.
Like, we're not too serious about this guy. Like, he's just a dick,
Yeah.
literally.
Mama named him right.
Mama named right.
Basically.
She should have named him Penguin. I
Dude.
still love
Penguin.
Penguin.
He is the Penguin, though. Like, look at him. He shoots some freaking prosecutor in Texas on an accidental hunting trip.
Yeah, he's a menace, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you?
Still didn't apologize. Did you know about this, Parker?
I'm sorry you were in the wrong spot when I shot my gun.
Oh, sorry, dude. I was aiming for that dog over there.
Dude, he is a dog shooter, too. He probably was like, yeah, let the puppies run. He brings his own puppies to let go and shoot. He's
Dude,
that mess.
that's
I could see that, dude.
Oh,
Just launching puppies in the air.
Oh, my gosh.
oh my gosh.
Oh,
It sounds
my gosh.
like there's like that running joke where people say that rich people pay to go hunt
Like people?
people.
Yeah.
It's like Dick Cheney just like paying a bunch of puppies to go hunt puppies. Oh,
I can
so
see him
effed.
there. He's just like,
Oh.
It's like, sir,
that's like his laugh.
there's so many other animals to hunt. He's like, yeah, but they're not like puppies. It's
Yeah,
just a rush.
All those guys are just way slower. I can.
They don't scream the same.
It's like, we can hunt rabbits. He's like, nah.
Nah, they're too fast. I can't aim that quick.
I'm
At
only
least-
quick in the bed.
What the fuck? The puppies are just too docile. They probably just sit in front of them.
Yeah,
He
shake him
likes
up in
the
that box and let him
innocence.
go. Yeah, just like that.
Dude, I think you shook that one a little too hard. It's walking funny. Oh my god. Oh, but no, he's a piece of shit, and he's the only one that we can throw the allegedly in front of, even though like most of the time we say it's not true.
Yeah.
Because that's obvious. But I don't want to do the same thing with Senator Kennedy, just because I don't have any supporting evidence, and some people might start some shit that's not supposed to be started.
Right.
So I just wanted to be clear on that. But going back to the Senate, there are tactics like that. One of the things they have in the Senate is the filibuster. Ted Cruz, one time on the Senate floor, talked for, I want to say it was over like 18 hours. And he just kept
Straight?
talking. Yeah, straight. Because he was trying to do the filibuster to where it was like, oh, you have X amount of time before this bill can get passed. And in order to stop the bill, he just kept talking and talking to delay a vote on it.
Mhm.
And he read Green Eggs and Ham on the Senate floor. He did all the stuff. And, our good old Senator Mike Lee from Utah assisted him with lots of pointless, dumb questions. And it was this big smokescreen. And he's hailed as a hero for this in the Senate. He's like, that's a true conservative. He was out there and he was defending our country from these liberals and their terrible policies. And so he's the quote unquote good senator from Texas. And so there's a lot of shows that senators will put on, and they make them look so positive. And I think it's really easy in the light of these investigations for them to do that. I mean, they're politicians. They're really good at talking. They're very good at entertaining us because that's the type of person you want to reelect. And, even now, if you're looking at the polls in the Republican race, like in the primaries, the reason why Donald Trump is so far ahead is because he's built this loyal fan base because he's just entertaining for everybody to watch. I mean, everybody loves a train wreck.
You can't look away.
Exactly. And, sometimes you start rooting for the runaway train. And so
Runaway train, never
he's-
coming back.
he's very good. He's
It's
very
Donald Trump.
charming. But, and, everybody had their poster child who's like, Ron DeSantis is going to go after him and they're going to do this. But the biggest complaint about Ron DeSantis right now is he's not entertaining. He's too formal. He seems too boring. Like after the first Republican debate, I was watching some of the feedback and they're like, well, Ron DeSantis didn't hurt himself, but he didn't help himself because he's just low energy. He's too boring. And it's like,
That is the stupidest thing.
right?
That like that's how we decide who we're gonna like, who each party wants to run for president is
Right.
based off of them just like heckling each other on stage and like poking fun, and
Yeah.
it's like who can get the biggest burn. Like it's like junior high.
Yeah.
Why do you think
would
Mitt
want the-
Romney lost?
Well, I don't want to get into that. A lot
Yeah,
of
well,
theories on
he
that
was
too,
more
but-
boring than Barack Obama.
Yeah,
Mitt Romney is a boring guy. Let's level it out. Like,
but like it's so stupid that the American that just shows how big a freaking horse and pony show the whole government is.
Right.
Because they're like, it's like the Hunger Games, but like in a different. They're like, let's just put these people on a stage and have them like answer these stupid questions that we've like told them we're gonna ask them. They've had time to think about. I mean, it's all just this big like facade. Like whoever
Right.
the president is, it doesn't even matter anyways. Like they're just being controlled by whoever else,
Right.
whoever they, whoever.
Kanye West.
Yeah, Kanye's behind it.
oh my
Kanye's
gosh,
just controlling everything right now.
Yeah, with this, never mind. but
He's
Kanye
giving
is
free
stuff.
Yeezys to everybody.
Jeez.
it just shows like how big of a our whole government's like, hey, look over here, and they're like, it's totally all just a big distraction.
Right.
But then like they don't talk, the corporations of all the media, like they don't talk about the stuff that actually matters. They don't.
Right.
It drives me nuts because, like, so I pretty much don't even have social media anymore, and it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And like, it makes when you take a step back from it, you're like, you realize how little all this stuff matters,
Yeah.
and all you can do is vote. So you better vote. That's like the only control you have.
Yeah.
Right.
But they like try and pump you up or persuade you or whatever with all this stuff, but
Yeah.
doesn't even matter.
But it just goes to show that they're so good at being charismatic and we choose the people who are most entertaining. It's so much it's extremely easy for them to go ahead and distract us. Actually, real quick, I want to say thank you for Parker to joining us on the show. He's actually leaving right now. He has to go. And so thank you for joining us today and good luck. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. It's been fun. So we'll see you guys
It's always a
another
good time.
All right. See ya. So continuing on with that, let's jump into our next level of conspiracy theory.
Yeah. So something to mention on this that I had quite a hard time trying to find any like background on a lot of these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced it's because somebody's trying to hide it. And that, maybe I'm just putting my tinfoil hat on, but like, for instance, the Wayfair stuff,
Yeah.
a lot of it is like I tried looking into it and a lot of it is just saying how it was false, which
Right.
I understand. Like if it is false, that's fine. But there's not really any background on it. There's nothing like, I couldn't find a website or anything in an article that stated this is where the Wayfair stuff started.
Yeah.
This is like the claims behind everything, and this is how it ended. It was all like, all of this stuff ruined people's lives. The
Yeah.
Wayfair stuff is all fake. And that was pretty frustrating to see just because I wanted to speak on it,
Yeah.
and I haven't been able to find like any sort of solid information on it. There was a few things on Pizzagate and like Frazzled Drip, whatever it is, which were also pretty interesting. So just kind of give like a background on what Pizzagate is and all this stuff is like. and forgive me if I like mess some things up, but and again, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but it was during 2020 that all these things came up, and I think just people had a lot of time on their hands,
Yeah.
to kind of just mess around on the internet. But what it was that there was a sex traffic ring,
Yeah.
and like apparently what was happening was that these celebrities, these wealthy people, would go and sacrifice these kids. Like Hillary Clinton's actually linked quite a bit with this.
Yeah.
But the theory behind it is that they would sacrifice these kids and then like drink their blood or inject their blood into them to make them younger, to like live longer, stuff
Right.
like that. Which is really weird. And this will kind of lead into what Brennan wanted to talk about with satanic rituals and stuff. This also leads into the frazzle drip, or frazzled rip, whatever it is. But they were from the emails, all of like, or the laptop from Anthony Weiner
Yeah.
that were circulating around the dark web, where somebody did a bunch of like looking into the laptop, and they found these like hidden files that apparently there was a video that contained Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin raping a young girl and then drinking her blood as like a satanic ritual.
It's disgusting.
Which is freaky, man. It's so, I don't know. And like, if that is real, that is just like, I don't know. The hard thing is that there's never any like solidified evidence about it. It was all just kind of like, I just forgot the word.
It's kind of just like a lot of hearsay. Like somebody
yeah,
says
exactly.
something and but they can't show it to you. They're like, oh, I had this, but the deep state got rid of it.
Right. Exactly. So it's hard to
We accidentally lost Hunter Biden's laptop. Quote unquote. I think that's Robert Mueller from the FBI who said that.
But yeah, it's hard to like I don't want to believe any of it because it's so shitty, but also at the same time, like along with everything, it's hard to believe that there's so many different conspiracy theories that like revolve around this general idea of like sex trafficking, and then like the rich just trying to be young again. You know, is that I could totally see that being a very feasible idea, and it's hard to want to like believe that it doesn't exist,
Right.
you know, because there is so many theories behind it. But again, they're all theories. They're all circumstantial, you know?
Yeah.
And so we don't know if anything's real, and it just is frustrating. And it's the same issue that I had with like the Becks, you know, is that the Becks, and I mention this a lot, but the Becks is frustrating because you have all these interesting stories and these things, but nobody knows where they came from.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where they are now. And like, there's no end to the story or like conclusion, mind you, and it doesn't have to have a conclusion, but at least with like other kind of cryptids and stuff, you have like an origin, you know, with the like Bigfoot and stuff like that, like or the wig, or kind of like, I mean, I think most every cryptid has at least some sort of origin, where they come from, why they're doing what they do. The Becks, at least as far as I know, they're just kind of like menaces, you know. Nobody knows why they're here. Nobody knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
Nobody knows what they are, you know. And
almost like going back to the Dyatlov Pass incident that we talked about too, where it's like, where did the radiation come from? Because there's abnormal amounts of radiation. Like, what happened to these people? Why was her tongue cut out?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
There's just so many questions, and you know, it's suspicious. There's a lot of cover up stuff, and even with the FBI, like this has happened over and over again, to where it really just it shows, like you were saying, where it's frustrating because we'll never get a clear answer. But it's because I think in these situations, definitely with the Dyatlov Pass and what's going on here, the people who want or who know what happened don't want others to know, and so they've made it happen in a way to where you can't find out.
Right. And that was what was frustrating, because I really was looking forward to like doing all this research, because prior to these episodes, what we like to do is like we do the research, but for me at least, I usually do research like 2 or 3 days before, because I feel like I'll just forget everything.
Right.
And so I like heard about all these conspiracy theories, and so then like 2 days ago, I hopped on and started doing my research, but then I couldn't find like anything good, and it was super frustrating. Um, there's like a handful of things that you can find like Wikipedia and stuff, but
Right.
other than that, there wasn't much more on Pizzagate. Like there's a bunch of like stuff that's around it. Like there's I don't remember his first name, but there was a guy, Welch is his last name, but he went and shot up the restaurant that everybody thinks that where like the sex trafficking and the kids were being held at.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think I've got that restaurant comment.
Right.
So he went to this restaurant and shot it up because he thought he was going to like help try and find the kids.
Yeah.
And so he was going to go do like his own like self investigation.
Yeah.
And he thought he was going to be like a hero. But eventually what happened is he brought a gun, he shot up a freaking restaurant. Like, what do you think is going to happen, bro?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it was frustrating to try to find more.
He got locked in his own echo chamber, and the only way like you can really and you know, I feel like there are some kernels of truth when you go down these roads, but there's definitely a lot of wrong information. I think there's intentional misinformation because if I wanted to find more information on this, and this is why I'm not going to say this is definitive, like it was this demonic sex cult that was being run, that was used to propel the New World Order and bring all of this stuff to fruition and to really show the shadow government. The reason why I'm not going to go and say like that's a fact is because the sources that I had to go to get there don't have evidence.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, you know, you have to scour Reddit. I was on Quora and I was finding all of these people. And, you know, some of this stuff comes from the infamous Alex Jones too, who says a lot of stuff like they're putting chemicals in the water that are turning the freaking frogs gay. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of, and it's just so hard because none of it is like, you can't get a good source out of it. And the people that you would, I guess, consider good sources, are all saying like the same thing. Oh, this hurt a lot of people. Like, like this Wayfair, for instance, the Wayfair conspiracy, all I could find was like, this actually did a lot more harm than good, like this big conspiracy or whatever. And it is like, oh, well, I get that. Like, if it did do harm, like that sucks.
Yeah.
But I just want to know the details behind it. But all the details are like hidden. And that's what I find so weird. Mm-hmm. Why would all these details be hidden from the public eye if it was all fake?
Exactly.
You know? Why hide something if quote unquote, you know, it's not real?
Right.
You know? And so it's like, I don't know, if I had a really nice car and then people are like, oh, can I see your really nice car? No. Nobody's ever going to believe that I have a nice car.
Right.
I'm going to show it off. And so it's like, mind you, like this is, again, it's different. It's just like, for instance, but with the Wayfair stuff is like, if you want to shed more light on something that isn't legit, then why wouldn't you just put that theory or the conspiracy out there and say, oh, these are the reasons why all of this is fake.
Right.
A lot of it's just like, oh, this hurt a lot of people, and this is why you shouldn't believe anything you hear. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to hit on with that. Unfortunately, I couldn't find much information on it, and maybe it's just I'm not looking in the right places. But this was, a lot of it was to be linked with Epstein and with Hillary Clinton.
Right.
A lot of people think that Hillary Clinton was like majority responsible for a lot of the Wayfair stuff as well, because it also came from like the same idea where there was a sex trafficking ring and these like bookshelves that were $30,000 were kids. And again, we stated this last time, but the reason behind them being so expensive is because the average person isn't going to look there.
Right.
Only the higher people, the high echelon of people like will look there and go out of their way to purchase something that expensive, just to look younger, blah, 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 this and that. So yeah, that's kind of the information I have, but I wanted to dive into what you had said about like the satanic cults and stuff.
Right. So, you know, there's a lot of, it's interesting. It really is. There's something deeper about Hillary Clinton that they use as an evidence because she's involved, or allegedly she's involved in the whole sex cult thing. There's a reason why they'll say if you look at her when Bill Clinton was president and then how she was in the Obama administration, and her aging process through there is very minimal, and she doesn't look like she aged much.
Right.
But starting when Jeffrey Epstein got locked up and his whole sex ring was starting to crumble and all of this stuff happened, she started to age a lot more rapidly. Like, it shows in her face. That's one thing they show there. And the same thing with Bill Clinton too, is what they point out. And, you know, just as a side note, like, Bill Clinton, he was kind of he likes sex. I mean, you know, you know what? A lot of people like sex, but
it is
he
not a
liked-
crime to like sex. I mean,
he was in the Oval Office and he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky.
right.
And so it's not out of the realm that, you know, him and Jeffrey Epstein were really good buddies, because that is known too.
Right.
But it's just an example to where, like, okay, these people, because going back to the whole magical ritual thing of the satanic cult, where they're, I don't know about the killing, I didn't find too much, but the sex magic that's there. And I
Yeah.
feel like stealing the innocence of these girls almost like ages them in a way. And if you're able to take that away from them and absorb it into yourself to stay young, then that's another conspiracy that went on there. They also go in to talk about how the Lolita, his plane,
Yeah.
how there was a lot of magical things going on there, and how Lolita means something extremely significant. And
I
in
wonder if it was just like a code word.
it, you know what, it could be. Some people, I wouldn't put it past it being like a code word.
Yeah.
Some people say it was part of the magical ritual, like the name was there, and
Right.
the fact that it picked up the girls and it took them from place to place was another big part of it. And the fact that it has X amount of letters in it is a significant number, which is this magical ritual stuff. I wasn't going to dive down the rabbit hole and write that all down. But if you want to go on Reddit or Quora, or really just take a deep dive anywhere and do some conspiracy stuff and go fucking crazy, by all means, go ahead and do it. Because there's a lot of this stuff that's like, and then this, and then this.
Right.
And at the end, the whole goal for them to do it is to bring about the new world order, to bring this shadow government into power, to where it's no longer the American government or the French government. You have this global government who's putting up this facade between everything. And the only reason they've brought it together is through magic. And, you know, some people say that Jeffrey Epstein nicknamed his different mansions, different things. Like the mansion in New York was the Throne of Baphomet, where his island was the Devil's Garden, and different names like this. And different places
That's
had
so
different
freaky.
significant. And there were code things like in the Devil's Garden, they were partaking of the evil fruit.
Yeah.
And well, I don't know if it was the evil fruit or the sacred fruit or the pure fruit.
Yeah.
But it
Which
was
is freaky because, like, if you think about it in like a different sense of like the fruit being, if it was like pure fruit or whatever, it's just kind of unsettling because you
Right.
think about it in a different sense of like maybe it's not something they're eating,
right.
but like the fruit, it's pure of like an innocent child.
Right.
You know, it's just like, oh, that's like sends shivers down my spine. It's so disgusting.
And then in New York, when you have his mansion there called the Throne of Baphomet, and Prince Charles was known to come there. And it's, you know, New York, kind of like the Big Apple, it's a huge spot. And so having it as the Throne of Baphomet, almost watching over all of the people and being on this hill kind of reigning over the world.
Right.
You know, and, you know, earlier in the time when he was there, like the World Trade Center was there. And so being in the same city as the World Trade Centers, which is a whole different thing when those were taken down, in a whole different magical conspiracy.
That would actually be fun to do an episode on that too.
That would be.
Yeah.
Shit, today's 9/11, bro.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, wait,
no,
no, that's
tomorrow.
tomorrow. Today's 9/10.
Yeah, today.
It almost blew my mind. But no, just a lot of stuff like that, and those nicknames that, if you really want to dive down that rabbit hole and look up all of the different things, then by all means do it. It's interesting and it's very entertaining. but there's no evidence. It's a lot of hearsay, she
Yep.
says, and a lot of reaching because, you know, you could pull anything. Like if I were to sneeze 3 times, then somebody could be like, "Oh, you're mocking the Holy Trinity." Like it's so easy. Or like, "Oh, Brennan, your name has X amount of letters. This has something to do with satanic magic." Like
Right.
you're really reaching for things, and you can make connections about anything. Like,
Mhm.
you know, somebody could completely demonize me if they wanted to.
Right.
And you know, I haven't done anything. I mean,
Right. Yeah, I think, and that's the hard thing with all these conspiracy theories, you know,
yeah,
is that, and again, it was during 2020 that a lot of these ideas came to fruition.
right.
And I think it was just everybody just, like I said, everyone just had a lot of time on their hands. They
Yeah.
were all inside. And I'm sure some of it is real. You know, I don't want to downplay or take that away from anybody, but
Yeah,
I'm sure there are things that were kind of pushed to a little bit too much of a magnitude where it wasn't actually legit.
right.
But just to hit on what you said, I think a lot of things that are said, like that number thing, how
Yeah.
many letters, it's just kind of like, it's a little, they are reaching, you know, and it's
Yeah.
hard to know what is legit and what's kind of like just people's thoughts.
Right.
You know.
Because they did bring a lot of numerology into it. And then they also brought in the zodiac to it. They're like, this event here that we have documentation of happened under like Pisces or Taurus. And
Right.
because it happened under this sign, and like the bull is this, that it did that. And if, you know, I would go into a lot more detail about it if we weren't so pressed for time. But and you know, personally, I don't think it's worth doing another episode on
Yeah.
conspiracies for this. Just because it gets exhausting, and it almost gets annoying in a way too, to where you're just like, okay, I get it. Let's move on. Like,
Yeah.
show me something else. You almost get frustrated with these conspiracy theorists because they start to ramble, and then they start saying things that are like, oh, you've crossed a line too. Because again, like, they always bring in the Jews.
Yeah.
They
That's
always
weird.
bring that in too, because, you know, a lot of political leaders and a lot of prominent people are Jewish.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for them to do, but it's always with the Jews. And
Yeah.
when it gets to the Jews and the anti-Semitism, I just sit there and I'm just like, oh my God, please stop.
Yeah. It's pretty
Leave
weird.
them alone. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and his sexual cult. We're not talking about how the Jews ruled the world.
Yeah.
Like,
It's so weird. man.
Give
I
me
don't
a
know.
break, sir. But yeah, that's kind of the main gist of
The
that.
gist, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know. It's very interesting, I think, and I implore all of you guys to just dive in, do your own research as well, because
Right.
it is weird, and I think people will understand things differently than I do, and so it is always good to look into it yourself. But
Right.
I wish I could find more info on all that wafer stuff, because that was at the time it was very interesting.
For real.
So, but
Yeah. And, you know, I think my personal conclusion at the end of all of this is Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. That
Yeah.
much is apparent. And there's too much stuff that's too, again, circumstantial evidence. There's so much circumstantial evidence that, you know, isn't viable in a court of law or anything to make a definite decision. But for me, there's so much of this stuff that it's just so obvious that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. There was this deep syndicate that he was running, of course, with a lot of powerful people. And the fact that we talked about earlier, he had a lot of stuff. Jeffrey Epstein cared about, number one, himself. He didn't want to go down. He was going to rat these people out for all the misdeeds they were doing. And that led to him getting killed.
Yep.
That's my consensus at the end of this. After doing the research and what I've seen, I feel like I won't say simple, because of course there's probably extra pieces,
Oh yeah.
but that's the main gist of it.
Yeah.
People didn't want him to get away because that would throw them under the bus.
Right.
And yeah, Jeffrey Epstein
Didn't kill himself.
piss off.
Yep.
You didn't kill yourself though. You're still a piece of shit. And you know what? I'm still glad you're dead.
I agree. 100%.
10 out of 10. Like, I don't think there's anybody who's like, you know what? That Jeff Epstein guy, we miss him.
Yeah.
Like, you know, maybe his other guys are just like, whatever, but, you know, piss off.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, we would love to hear from you guys and any feedback that you have. So please reach out to us at shadow.valleypod at thedogenetwork.com. Again, shadow.valleypod at thedogenetwork.com. And follow us on Instagram.
Yep. Follow us on Instagram, Shadow Valley Pod. Give us a follow and send us a DM. We'll talk to you through DMs. But we'd love to hear from you guys. We appreciate everybody that takes the time to listen to us. Sorry we're a little late. Last week was Labor Day as well, so we were out with our families,
Right.
taking some time. So, but we'll be back for a regular schedule, uploading weekly. But yeah, guys, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Alrighty. Thank you, guys. Bye.